I didn't live up to my guarantee, regretfully, but in any event, better late than never, isn't that true? I'm going to read through the results of the ballot, and you'll see it's very clear. It'll be up on the screen, and it's very clear, and I'll only read out what it is necessary to read. So the first question is question 1, and I'll just read the question. Do you agree that the government should urgently prioritise and implement existing policies and strategies in relation to older people, including, for example, the National Positive Ageing Strategy, the Carer Strategy, and the National Dementia Strategy? And there were 78 eligible voters in all, and the 78 voted. No invalid vote, so it's the total valid poll was 78, and absolutely no doubt about the result of this particular ballot. 100% of the voters, that's 78 votes in favour of that proposal. So 100% voted yes on that one. Then going on to ballot 2, this question, in general, who should be principally responsible for providing required care for older people? And again, the voting makeup was exactly the same, and the option 2 won, as it were. That was, it is mainly the family older person which should be responsible, but the state should have at least some responsibility, and there were a total of 47 votes on that option, equivalent to 60%. So that is the recommendation that there will be for the Oireachtas. But we will set out the other results in relation to the other options also in the report. Only 1% were in favour of the family older person having total responsibility. 32% were in favour of it mainly being the state which should be responsible, but the family should have some responsibility, and only 6% were in favour of the state being totally responsible. So that's the result of question 2. Question 3 then, do you think that there should be an increase in public resources allocated for the care of older people? And there was one invalid vote on this occasion, so the total valid poll was 77, and 67 voters, or 87%, voted in favour of that, in favour of an increase in public resources allocated for the care of older people. So that was 87% as against 13% against. And then moving on to question 4, where do you believe additional funding for care of older people should primarily be spent? There were 78 valid votes on this occasion, and this was ranking in terms of preference, and the first preference was for home care services and supports. That was a score of 198. The second preference was community-based integrated housing models, and the third option, or the third preference I should say, was option 1, residential care services. And that particular question, as I made clear this morning, relates to the additional funding. Then question 5 was different, because where do you believe overall funding for care of older people should come from? Again, 78 valid votes, and option 2 was the preference on this occasion. Compulsory social insurance payment and earmarked tax for all workers linked to the labour market participation, not unlike the current PRSI mechanism to fund long-term and social care for older people. So the preference was for the compulsory social insurance model the second preference was for general taxation. The third preference was for cost sharing. And the fourth preference was for insurance-based long-term social care, private insurance. So that, again, that is very clear. But I just want to emphasise here, as we emphasised this morning, that what we were concerned with here was overall funding, all funding for older people. And that's the way the members see the source of that funding. Compulsory social insurance payment being the preference. And then question 6, do you think that the government should expedite the current commitment to place home care for older persons on a statutory footing? As I said this morning, this was an explicit question, which in a way fell within question 1, but it was explicit, and again 78, the total valid poll was 78, and 77 voters, or 99%, voted in favour of that, the expedition of current commitment to place home care for older persons on a statutory footing. So that was very, very much consistent with question 1. Question 7, do you think that regulation such as that currently in place for residential centres should be extended to afford better protection to older people in receipt of all health and care services? Again, the total valid poll was 78, and the result is similar to the result for question 6. Yes, 77 votes in favour of that, in favour of regulation, and that represents 99%. So again, that is consistent with question 6 and also with question 1. Then question 8. If the government were to decide to extend regulation to other health and care services for older people, what other services do you believe should be regulated? And again, the total valid poll was 78. And on this occasion, there were 4 options, and the vote in respect of each option is relevant. In relation to option 1, respite services, 90% of the voters were in favour of that. In relation to option 2, daycare services, 87% were in favour. In relation to option 3, care and support services delivered by service providers in a person's own home, 92%. And option 4, care and support services provided throughout a supported housing scheme, 91%. A very large element of consistency there. Question 9, do you think the government should introduce some form of mandatory pension scheme to supplement the state pension? On this occasion, there was 1 invalid vote, so the total valid poll was 77. And those in favour of the introduction of a mandatory pension scheme to supplement the state pension, those who voted yes, 87%, and 13% voted no. Then question 10. Do you think that the current anomaly which arises when a person who must retire at 65 is not entitled to the state pension until 66, that's age 66, should be removed? Again, there was a total valid poll of 78, of whom 75 voted in favour of the removal of the anomaly. So 75 votes, 96% of the vote in favour of the removal of this anomaly. Then question 11, do you think that a mandatory retirement on the basis of age should be abolished? Sorry, I should have read that. Do you think that mandatory retirement on the basis of age should be abolished? Again, the total valid poll was 78, and of those, 67 were in favour of the abolition. That was 86%. So 67 votes voted yes, or 67 voters voted yes, which represents 86%. Now, question 12. Do you think that the state pension should be benchmarked by reference to average earnings? Again, we had a total valid poll of 78, of whom 69 voted for in favour of that proposal. So it was 69 votes, or 88%, in favour of yes, and against 9 votes, or 12%. Then question 13. Do you think that the government should take steps to rationalise private pension schemes to include greater transparency in relation to fees? 70, the total valid poll again was 78, and all of the voters voted yes in favour of the government taking steps to rationalise private pension schemes to include, I should say, greater transparency in relation to fees. Question 14. Should the government backdate the Homemakers scheme to 1973? Again, the total valid poll was 78, of whom 68, or 87%, were in favour of backdating the Homemakers scheme to 1973. Question 15, do you think state support for carers, including access to education, retraining and pension arrangements, should be enhanced? Again, a total valid poll of 78, of whom 77, or 99%, voted in favour of that proposal. And then finally, question 16, and I'll just go through it issue by issue. Again, the total valid poll was 78. 72 voters voted that the responsibility for older people should be formally delegated to a dedicated Minister of State for older people. And then on the next issue, 71 voters, or 91%, voted to have a dedicated point of contact for older people to access information about services, support and entitlements, and run a national awareness campaign to support it. On the third issue, 69 voters voted in favour of taking steps to ensure that older people have a stronger voice in determining their own care needs. That was 88%. And on the fourth issue, 65 voters, or 83%, voted that there should be insurance that stronger governmental leadership in relation to the prioritisation of health and social care needs of older people. Well, to ensure a stronger governmental leadership in relation to those matters, that is to say, health and social care needs of older people. The fifth issue, 57 voters, or 73%, voted that the state should promote, encourage and organise non-financial intergenerational transfers, for example, between younger and older people. And then finally, the sixth issue, 72 voters, or 92%, voted that the state should urgently commence the remaining provisions of the Assisted Decision-Making Capacity Act 2015 and urgently enact legislation in relation to safeguarding of an adult who may be vulnerable, or adults who may be vulnerable. So that's the voting, and it's very clear-cut, it seems to me. The result of the poll will form the basis of the recommendations to the Oireachtas and both houses of the Oireachtas. And I hope that we will be in a position to present the report to the Oireachtas by the end of September, and of course it will be sent to the members for their information in advance, as I said this morning. And apart from that, I've kept you here a very long time, much longer, 2 hours longer than we had planned, so I'm not going to take up much more of your time, although I do feel I want to deal with the thank yous, because there are a lot of thank yous. It was a very good weekend. I thought the speakers were really great, and in fact over both weekends, I don't know about the rest of you, but I found it extremely interesting, and it gave me great insight into ageing in Ireland and the work the experts are involved in, and I thought it was most helpful to our thinking on the topic. You remember on the first week we had 2 older people who gave pre-recorded interviews, and they were very memorable and very touching, and I want to repeat my gratitude to them. And I think they had an effect on us. Then throughout both weekends we had the facilitators and the note takers, and I think they did a very good job over both weekends. And most importantly, I want to say thank you to the expert advisory group. They were absolutely crucial to the development of the programme. It was such a broad issue, and I needed guidance, and I think Sharon needed guidance as to how we would appropriately narrow it down. And as you know, we narrowed it down to long-term care for 1 week and pensions, income and retirement for the second week. And I think that was wise. There are an awful lot of other issues concerning the elderly, but it would simply not have been possible to do any more within the 2 weeks. So we had a great assistance from Patricia, who's still here, Susan, who's just left to go back to Youghal, and Eamon, who was here this morning. And I'm not giving away any secret when I say he's gone to Thurles. And you know why he's gone to Thurles. And then we had 3 other members in the expert advisory group, Mandy and Roseanne, who were here on the last occasion, and John Gary, who's been with us in the EAG from the outset, and they were most helpful, and I want to express my gratitude to them. It's difficult when you have a weekend like this stuck in the middle of the holiday period to get everybody, but we got great assistance, so I'm really, really grateful. And of course I'm grateful to the members. Without you we wouldn't be here, and I'm very grateful for your engagement with the issues, which is remarkable, I think. And you have given us guidance, and I think as I see the process now, I think it's a very useful process. And I know a lot of you are travelling home, so I'm not going to delay you. I'm just going to mention that I won't be seeing you for 6 weeks. Is it 6 weeks?
No, more.
Oh, is it more? Oh my God. Yeah, in any event, our next, well, I'll be seeing the members of the steering group in the meantime, but our next topic, as you know, is very, very interesting. It's how the state can make Ireland a leader in tackling climate change. We have already started on it. We have already got 4 members of an expert advisory group. We've had 1 meeting. We're having another next week. So we're getting the show on the road, if I may put it that way. And but our meeting, our weekend meeting, will be on the 30th of September and the 1st of October, and I think it will be very, very interesting. So Idir an Dálin, as they say. Enjoy, have a good summer, and very many thanks for all your assistance. Thank you.